Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to assembled devotees. Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. This is Vinita Gandharvika Devidasi from Texas, welcoming all of you to Bhakti Sangha conference call. I thank all of you for attending this session. Please forgive me for interrupting your ecstatic chanting. I would like to read the 10 offenses to the holy name which are to be avoided, written by Srila Vyasadeva in Padma Purana. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the name of demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal or to be independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the order of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures in pursuance to the Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be an imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of the holy name. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruitive activity Karma Kanda. 9. To instruct a faithless person about the glories of the holy name. 10. To not have a complete faith in chanting of the holy name and to maintain material attachment even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must guard against these offenses in order to achieve the desired success of Krishna Prema. Once again, I thank everyone for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call today. Let us move on to our next part of the session, which is Srimad Bhagavatam class. Before that, may I know who all joined this morning?
हरे कृष्ण विनीता गंधर्विका माता जी दंडवत प्रणाम शिला प्रभुपाद की जय गुरु महाराज की जय प्रीतिदासी from Charlotte. Hare Krishna. Are you sick, माता जी?
No, Mataji. Today, I don't know. When I'm chanting, my voice went. I'm good.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Priti Mataji, Dhanavad Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining every day and giving your recitation. Welcome to the call.
Hare Krishna.
Is there anybody who would like to introduce themselves? Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mata ji, or Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. My humble obeisances to you and all the devotees. This is Krishna Kumari Devidasi from Nami.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Kumari Mataji, Dhanavad Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining and giving your recitation. Welcome to the call.
हरे कृष्ण माता जी दंडवत प्रणाम श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय गुरु महाराज की जय दिस इज श्यामा गौरी देवीदासी फ्रॉम शार्लेट प्लीज टेक केयर माता जी योर थ्रोट इज नॉट सो गुड
Hare Krishna, Shyama Gauri Mataji, Dhanavad Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Mataji, for joining and all glories to your wonderful services. Welcome to the call.
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, Danvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to all your services, Mataji. Thank you so much for eagerly taking the service at any time, Mataji. Thank you. You are inspiring us many ways. Thank you, Mataji. And my Danvat Pranams to all the assembled devotees. This is Sushmita from Canada.
Hare Krishna, Sushmita Mataji, Dhanavad Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Mataji. You are also always there on the call and helping us. Welcome to the call.
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all the assembled devotees. This is Indulekha Karna Devidasi from Lincoln. Thank you so much, Mataji, for coming and taking up this service so spontaneously. Haribol. All glories to your wonderful services.
Hare Krishna, Indulekha Mataji, Dhanavad Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Mataji, for encouraging me. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for your wonderful services too. Welcome to the call. Is there anybody who would like to introduce themselves? Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. This is Aditi Devidasi in Canada. Mataji, I'm sorry I had a network problem. I just joined. Okay, sorry about it. Hare Krishna.
No worries, Mataji. You can take question and answers. Hare Krishna, Aditi Mataji, Dhanavad Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Mataji, for joining and giving a recitation. Welcome to the call.
Hare Krishna.
Is there anybody who would like to introduce themselves? Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Vanita Gandharvika Mataji. Dandvat pranam. So all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj, and all glories to all the assembled devotees. This is Kiran Goyal from Baltimore.
Hare Krishna, Kiran Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Mataji, for joining every day and giving your association. Welcome to the call.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam, all glories to Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj, all glories to assembled devotees. This is Mohini Lakshmi from Pittsburgh.
Hare Krishna, Mohini Lakshmi Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining and giving your association. Welcome to the call. Is there anybody who would like to introduce themselves? Please go ahead. Okay. We can chant until Prabhuji joins. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Hare.
Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
So Prabhuji asked us to read the shloka and purport and everything.
Sure, we'll start the recording in that case. Yeah. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to Bhakti conference call. Today we are very fortunate to have His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu to enlighten us on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 7th chapter, 25th verse. Indu Mataji, over to you for reading the verses.
Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 7, Text 25. Buddhe jagaranam swapna sushuptir iti vrittaya tayenaiva bhuyante so adhyaksha purusha para. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Intelligence can be perceived in three states of activity: wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. The person who perceives these three is to be considered the original master, the ruler, the supreme personality of Godhead. Without purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Without intelligence, one cannot understand the direct activities of the senses, nor can he understand dreaming or the cessation of all gross and subtle activities. The seer and controller is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Soul, who by whose direction the individual soul can understand when he is awake, when he is sleeping, and when he is completely in trance. In Bhagavad Gita 15:15, the Lord says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smriti jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. The living entities are completely absorbed in the three states of wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep through their intelligence. This intelligence is supplied by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who accompanies the individual soul as a friend. Srila Madhavacharya says that the living entity is sometimes described as Sattva Buddhi when his intelligence acts directly to perceive pains and pleasures above activities. There is a dreaming state in which understanding comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Matta Smritir Jnanam Apohanam Cha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul, is the Supreme Controller, and under his direction, the living entities are sub-controllers. One must understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead with one's intelligence. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Pause the recording.
Yeah, Mataji, yes, we can. And if anybody want to introduce themselves, they can. Otherwise, I can continue chanting until Prabhuji joins. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Okay. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhu, for joining and giving your association. I now hand over the call to you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Have you read the verse and the purport?
Yes, Prabhuji, we already did that.
Sorry for the delay.
No worries, Prabhuji. Thank you.
I'm also joining from my other device.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Was there also?
Sure, Prabhuji.
Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanishalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Yesterday we discussed about the broad topic of perceiving the nature of the soul. And we talked about how we can understand the characteristics of the soul in terms of Satchitananda as living, learning, and loving. So now, in this particular verse, Prahlad Maharaj talks about a theme that is repeatedly referred to in the Bhagavatam, and that can just seem sometimes a technicality. That is the various levels of consciousness or states of consciousness. So these states of consciousness, it's interesting how they are addressed over here. It is said that the Lord beholds all these states of consciousness. The one who knows all these. Now, why does this matter? It can just seem to be like a technical detail. So I'll talk about three parts today. Consciousness and its states. And then what they signify, why are they important? And lastly, how bhakti transforms our consciousness. As the last part I'll discuss. So now consciousness itself is one of the biggest mysteries, both from a scientific perspective as well as a experiential perspective. From the perspective of science, the Nature magazine and many other publications have made lists of what are the unsolved questions, unanswered questions or unsolved mysteries. And generally this is consciousness always comes in the top 5 questions. Generally there's a second question. The first question is, where did the universe come from? And the second is, where did consciousness come from? So science tries to explain consciousness in terms of the body, from the brain specifically. So the origin of consciousness and even the phenomena of consciousness is itself a mystery. Now, even in our daily experience, consciousness can be a mystery or at least a wonder, because different people can be conscious of so many different things. The same situation, two people can perceive in completely different ways. Sometimes we can very easily understand that. Say, in a cricket match, one side wins and other loses. And say, some hundreds, 1,000 people are celebrating, the other side is devastated. The event is the same. So, daily experience event can lead to very different responses. But that is understandable because it's a straightforward match. But there are other times where also we see that how people process their experience is different. Bad things happen to everyone in life. Now, some people, when bad things happen to them, they just become bitter and broken. And others, they become tougher and stronger. Why this difference? So in that sense, consciousness is itself a mystery. Now, from the Gita's perspective also, there is a curious phenomena with respect to consciousness. Now, at one level, from the spiritual perspective, the Gita's perspective, consciousness is seen as the symptom of the soul. Just as the sunlight is seen as the symptom of the sun, even if we are not able to see the sun, we understand that it exists. If, say, we are in a room where the windows are such that we cannot directly see the sun, but light is streaming in, we understand the sun is there. So consciousness is the symptom of the soul, no doubt. And yet, in the 13th chapter, 6 and 7 verses, Krishna in the Gita is summarizing the Sankhya worldview over here. And he says over there that Mahabhutanya Hankaro Buddhiravyaktamevacha Indriyani dashaikam cha panchachendriya gocharaha. So he lists in the 6th verse, he lists the 24 elements of nature that are described in Sankhya. He talks about the 11 senses, the working sense, 5 working senses, the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, the mind, and like that, Mahabhutani Ahankaro. Like he talks about the Mahapancha Mahabhutas, and like that, he basically talks about 24 elements. But then, Ichha, Dvesha, Sukham, Dukkham, Sanghataschetana, Dhruti, Etat Kshetram Samasena, Savikaram Udarutam. So here he's describing this to be Kshetra. And then in 13.7, he describes Ichha, Dvesha, Sukham, Dukkham, Sanghatas Chetana, Dhruti. So what we aspiration, aversion, celebration, and happiness and dejection, and then Sanghatas Chetana, Dhruti. He says consciousness and our conceptions, our determinations. So he's describing these as Kshetra Vikar, the transformations of consciousness, or sorry, transformations of the field of Kshetra. Now, interesting here, what all is he describing? Say, if I am over here and I am looking at the world over here, then he is saying that there is Ichha Dvesha, Ichha, and I want it, I don't want it. Sukham, Dukkham. Oh, I like it, I don't like it. This is the first set. Then he said Sanghatas Chetana Dhruti. Chetana is consciousness. So, Ichha Dvesha is understandable. And Sukha Dukkha is also understandable. And then why is Krishna saying Chetana to be a Kshetra Vikar? We say Chetana, consciousness comes from the soul. So why is Chetana considered to be a transformation of the field, transformation of matter? So is it not spiritual? Is it a material transformation? So the point is, this is where the complexity of consciousness comes in. See, when we try to say that consciousness comes from the soul, there are reductionistic scientists who oppose that. And many people say that there are so many changes that happen, that if a person's brain gets damaged, then their behavior changes. People take psychedelic drugs, and again their behavior changes. So if the state of the brain is so strongly affecting the state of consciousness, then isn't it logical to infer that consciousness actually comes from the brain? So there is some basis. So this is something which we all observe or experience, and it's not wrong. It is just incomplete. So Krishna does acknowledge that consciousness is a result of material transformation. So when we say consciousness comes from the brain, so this is correct. But comes from can refer to that the brain is the origin of consciousness, and it can also be the brain is the transmitter of consciousness. So the point is that we cannot really infer conclusively which is which. So the brain is undoubtedly an important element in the way consciousness manifests in the world. And it's like light is coming from a light source, but depending on the film that is around it, the light comes from, say, a bulb. Now the film around the bulb, the kind of covering, the coating, that if it changes, now the bulb itself is the origin, but the film is the transmitter. Transmitter in the sense that it is passing through it. So consciousness is like that light. The bulb itself is the soul. But the material machine, which involves the subtle body and the gross body, including the brain, they all affect how our consciousness comes out. And that material things can affect consciousness is something which is implicit in our own tradition. That is why when we take food, we offer food to the Lord, and we are very careful about which food we take and also how we take it. Food is matter. But he said that the matter affects our consciousness. Now we can say, okay, it's prasad, it's spiritual. That's true. At the same time, it is not that the material aspect is lost. It may be prasad, but if somebody has diabetes and they take sweet food, at a material level, it will have its effects. So the point is that there is a complex interaction between matter and spirit. And that's why when Krishna is talking about the nature of material existence, he says the Chaitanya that is manifested to us is not pure consciousness, it is conditioned consciousness. And so Chaitanya is a transformation of Chaitanya as seen by us. This is indeed a Kshetra Vikar. This is called as Chitta. Now, Chitta is not the same as Chit. Chit, if you remember, is Chit is the innate feature of the soul. Sat, Chit, Ananda. So, Chit is pure consciousness. And Chitta is conditioned consciousness. Now, it depends on how we utilize the Chitta, that we can either realize the Chit aspect of the soul, and we can go further and further away from realizing the Chit aspect. So basically, if we consider this is the soul, so the Chaitanya that comes out from the soul, at this stage, it is Chit. But the soul is covered by a subtle body. The soul is covered by a gross body. And then the consciousness that comes out over here is Chitta. So now, why are we going into this technical discussion right now? That is because based on how the consciousness is coming out through the subtle body and the gross body, the consciousness manifests itself differently. Now, just to elaborate on this, in the interface over here, in the gross body, there is the brain. So the brain is a part of the gross body, and the brain is a vital medium through which consciousness is transmitted. But the brain is not the source of consciousness. So consciousness comes from the brain as much as a phone call comes from a mobile. The phone call, the voice of the person with whom we are talking comes from the mobile, but the person is not in the mobile. The person is far away. So now, continuing this particular diagram, let's look at the states of consciousness. The states of consciousness are generally described to be four. there is Jagruti, Swapna, Sushupti, and then Turya, which the Sankhya and Yoga are two different schools of philosophy, although they are related. So the Turya state in Yoga, it is also called as Samadhi. I'll explain the similarities and differences between these two terms. But going back to this particular diagram that we just discussed, that let's consider that the soul is surrounded by the subtle body and the gross body, and say here there is the outer or material world. So now when the consciousness comes from the soul and reaches up to the material world, now the material world is not that far away. Actually speaking, we can say, in another sense, right now when the soul is conditioned, the material world is all around the soul. But when the consciousness reaches the material world, and specifically say some objects, some sense object in the material world, when the consciousness is coming this way, that is the state of Jagruti. So Jagruti means the consciousness from the soul comes through the subtle body to the gross body, and through the gross body to the physical world. Now when the consciousness comes through the subtle body, barely to a very little extent in the gross body. By the way, the color I am using, is it visible to you on the screen there?
The color I don't see. It's in black and white.
Prabhu,
Prabhuji.
you can use the yellow color.
We can see
Possible.
purple, we can see.
And we can see purple color.
Yeah, actually we can see it.
Is this blue is visible? Okay. Let me just change it. Okay. Is it visible now?
Yes, Prabhuji. It's yellow, yeah.
So when consciousness comes through the subtle body, through the gross body, then it is the state of Jagruti. When consciousness comes slightly out, it's mostly in the subtle body, but barely out, slightly out to the gross body, that is the Swapna state. So in the Swapna state, we are not physically aware of what is happening in the outer world. Our eyes are closed. But it is not that there's no consciousness in the subtle body at all, in the gross body at all. Like there's a loud sound, an alarm happens, we wake up. Somebody throws water on us, we wake up. Now in Sushupti, the consciousness barely comes out even to the subtle body. This is the state of what is called as deep sleep. Now, let me put it slightly differently over here. So let's make it like that. This is Sushupti. Now beyond this, if we consider the soul is in the material world, and then other side is the spiritual world, the spiritual reality basically. So Turya is the time when the soul's consciousness is going towards the spiritual world. And when eventually when the soul is liberated, basically the soul becomes, it's only the soul with no subtle body and gross body, the soul is experiencing spiritual reality. This is the next stage. But this is the stage of Turiya. So Turiya as experienced in the material world. Okay. In material world. And then Turiya as experienced beyond the material world. So this is talking about the Upanishads, the various states of consciousness. That when we function, we go through these various states of consciousness. Now, one way to understand these states of consciousness is, as I discussed right now, how far the consciousness is going in terms of the reach. Is it going till the subtle body? Is it going till the gross body? Is it going beyond the gross body to the outer world? Is it going to the spiritual domain? So that's one way to understand it. And this is the common way. Now, in this, the states of consciousness are talked about in the spiritual literature, in the Upanishads and other places, because they talk about how we can experience different realities, different levels of realities. And now, earlier when we talk about the mystery of consciousness, it's because the soul is not materially visible to the brain or to the human perception. Krishna says, Achintyoyam. So from a material perspective, to try to infer the existence of consciousness, it's possible, but it's never possible to make an irrefutable case for it. And people can always find some refutations. No, but this happens like this happens like that. This is happening. So like I said, there are two possibilities. When the brain changes, the consciousness changes. So that could mean consciousness comes from the brain. It means consciousness is simply transmitted through the brain or is originating from the brain. So to specifically pin down consciousness, that is difficult. Now, Acharya sometimes explain that achintya means that we cannot perceive it with pratyaksha. We can also actually not perceive it at anuman. It is only through shabda. The soul can be understood. Of course, some people say that it cannot perceive it to pratyaksha, but we can make some anuman about it. So there is a big, almost intellectual war going on in the field of consciousness studies, where the idea of where does consciousness originate from is being seriously discussed. And because consciousness goes through all these areas, the phenomena is a mystery. Currently, the most promising area for the interface of science and spirituality is consciousness studies. And Buddhists, Advaitins, Jains, Vaishnavas, all can unite actually in this area that there is some consciousness that is irreducible to matter. Now, of course, there are further differences about spiritual reality and what is the nature of spiritual reality and what is the nature of spiritual experience, depending on the particular conception of a particular tradition. Let me complete the session, if you don't mind, for the question. So, now I talk about what does these different states of consciousness signify. Now, in modern science, they have different states of sleep. They have the REM sleep and other kind of sleep states. So now this is a different way of looking at consciousness. So, the same object can be analyzed differently. And depending on that, you can get very different perceptions. Say, for example, if you consider the body is analyzed in terms of kapha, vata, pitta in Ayurveda. But if you consider in science, in modern science, in allopathy, there is no such thing as kapha, vata, pitta. Those particular elements can be correlated with certain things. but they are by no means considered central. Here it's more of biochemical balances between various organs. That's the, now we can say Kapha Vata Pitta also is biochemical balance. But here biochemical balances refers to the vitamins, the proteins, the macronutrients, the various components and how they work together or don't work together. It's analyzed differently. So similarly, consciousness as analyzed by modern science and analyzed by the Vedas is different. But from the broad Vedic perspective, what does it signify? So I explained what the states of consciousness are. What do they signify? They signify many things. The first is the nature of reality itself. A few hours ago, all of us were sleeping. And when we were sleeping, we were experiencing something completely different. And now we are experiencing something completely different. So most of us have probably heard some version of that story where there was a king and he dreamed that I am a butterfly. And that butterfly, he was moving around, experiencing the beauty of a flower, the taste of the nectar of the flower. And then he woke up and then he called his ministers and asked that, am I a king who had dreamt that I am a butterfly? Or am I actually a butterfly who's presently dreaming that I'm a king? So king, dreaming, I'm a butterfly. So which is a real? So basically, the dream experience can be so real. Which is the real thing over here? It can be a big, big question. And while it can seem to be like a funny story, but it signifies that if it signifies an important point, that can our experience or rather our present experience be the sole basis of determining our identity? Normally, that's how we decide who we are. Okay, I'm here, so okay, I'm a brahmachari, I'm an Indian, I'm an educator. That's my identity. But my identity is based on my present experience. But what we experience can be so different. So our experience leads to our sense of identity. And if our experience changes, then our identity changes. So sometimes people get amnesia and then they forget who they are. Now, in that case, even if there are many movies have this amnesia trope, where the person has an accident in a completely new place and they just don't know who they are. So sometimes even if they come back to the same place, they don't recognize. So basically, the volatility or present identity is so fragile. The fragility and volatility of our identity, of our present identity, is based on our present experience. This can make us think, who am I really? Most of us, we very easily say that the ABC of spirituality is I'm not the body, I'm the soul. And we can give arguments for that also. But and I'm not the body, I'm the soul. But you are a junior devotee, I'm a senior devotee, and you have to offer obeisances to me. Otherwise, you are committing a Vaishnava aparadha. So I may be using the philosophy that we are not the body to actually justify my present experience, which may actually not be reflective of my real identity. Now, I'm a senior devotee. Okay. But that's a part of, is that really reflecting my depth of spiritual realization? Or is that reflecting my position in the hierarchy right now, which is a part of conditioned reality? In the spiritual world, when we go back, Is a senior devotee here going to be a senior devotee there? Who knows? There, everybody is serving out of love. And while there are some hierarchies there's Radharani who is the greatest devotee, but it's a very intimate bond of love. So the point I'm making is that our present experience, if we are really introspective about this, if I say I'm a senior devotee, that could be an expression of spiritual realization, or that could be an expression of material position in the organization is spiritual, but what is my consciousness associated with? So therefore, this reflection that how our sense of identity can change so much. Some days, some nights we have vivid dreams. And when we wake up from those vivid dreams, we may wonder, what's going on here? We are shaken. Sometimes we have nightmares. Sometimes we have dreams. And now, basically, this gives us an opportunity to remember that we shouldn't become too attached to our present sense of identity. It's so volatile. All that it takes is just one switch of consciousness, and then we forget who we are. We forget where we are. And we experience reality quite a different way. So, now, of course, some people experience nightmares, some people experience dreams where they are happy dreams. But the point is, often our experiences are quite different from the experiences that we have right now. Some of our experiences in the dream state can also be similar to what we have. But the fact that we sleep, from a physiological perspective, it's required for the resting of the body. But from the physiological perspective, why did our consciousness have to turn off? We could just rest physically. The turning off our consciousness, turning off of our consciousness, it has philosophical implications. It's a daily reminder that there is a more to our existence than our physical existence. So our identity is more than our body. That if we want to realize, all that we need to do is just go to sleep. Then there's more to life. Now, what that more is, if you want to know what that more is, for that we need to wake up and do sadhana. And serious sadhana is required for that purpose. So this is how the consciousness grows. We realize our identity in this way. So this is the first significance of these four states of consciousness, is that we realize our present state of identity to be, our present identity is fragile and volatile. But within the bhakti tradition, this is not emphasized. This is commonly emphasized within the broad yoga tradition, Vedanta, even the Advaitic traditions. But in the bhakti tradition, the bhakti significance of this is that it's almost, I'll give another different metaphor. Say, if a person is sitting and is watching TV. Now, when they were watching TV, on the TV, there can be different channels. So, depending on which channel is being watched, that's what they will see. But suppose a person is watching TV with multiple channels and they are so glued to TV. So imagine, say, this is like they have a home theater where the entire room around them is dark and all that they can see is what is on the screen. And in this case, assume that there is another person over here, and it's this person who controls the remote. Then what happens is, depending on which channel is being pressed, the person watching the TV will experience things differently. Now, just to make it a little more complicated, we can say there is a minor remote over here where a few channels can be changed, but there is a major remote over here. Just like, say, parents may want their children to play some, okay, if you want to play some video games or this or that, but we don't want you to watch, this channel has this kind of movie, this kind of action, violence, this has too much explicit sexuality, we don't want to watch all that. The child has some options in the remote with them, but the parent has the bigger remote, and there is so much more to be experienced through the TV, but that the child does not have the capacity. So like that, we have our remote by which when we are looking at the world, the TV is like the world. We experience something. So right now you are hearing this class, but you could turn around and hear something else. You could look at a physical TV in your place. You can look at your phone. You can talk with people. So we have a capacity to choose our experiences within our conditioned reality right now. But these experiences are limited. So in the Jagruti state, we can experience various things, and how different people experience different things in Jagruti is also wonderful. But many times, we can't experience anything beyond. We all sleep every day, and sleep is a very natural activity. But many of us, practically all of us, will have had experience when we want to sleep and we are not able to sleep. Of course, the more common experience for us devotees is that we want to stay awake and we go to sleep. It happens during chanting, it happens during hearing, reading. So basically, this consciousness shift, that Jagruti to, let's just call it non-Jagruti. Non-Jagruti can be any of these. It can be Swapna, it can be Sushupti, it can be Turiya or Samadhi. So any of these, this shift, it is not entirely in human control. It is, there are many times when we want to sleep, but we are just not able to sleep. And there is like a clear shift at one particular moment when we are awake. We'll be drifting into sleep, but at one particular time we are asleep. And that shift of consciousness is not under human control. So the Paramatma is the person who is governing this whole setup. Like the home theater, the child may be watching, but the parents are controlling the home theater. Like that, the Paramatma watches our experience in all various states of consciousness. That we may go through Swapna, Jagruti, and Sushupti, but the Paramatma is beyond. The Lord is beyond. The Lord observes all these things. So in the impersonal idea, there is no, the Paramatma's role is not that significant. The Lord does not ultimately exist as a separate being who can experience all four states of consciousness. We can only experience one at a time, and to some extent we can draw the experience from one in another, but not much. So basically, the signification is that the contemplating the various states of consciousness can point to the soul, and it can also point to the super soul. And I'll make the last point now about how does bhakti work in these areas. So basically, the purpose is the Turiya, the state of consciousness, is ultimate reality, because the gross world, the gross material world and the subtle material world, both are temporary, and our experiences in them are also temporary. So basically, the way there are two ways in which spiritual realization happens or spiritual growth happens. That, say, if this is the material world and this is the spiritual world, that means there are two opposite sides. So gradually the idea of spiritual realization is that, say, initially our consciousness is caught in the material world. We try to decrease how much it is caught in the material world. Then we try to withdraw it inwards. We try to withdraw it inwards. And gradually what will happen is we will direct it outwards. We'll direct it towards the spiritual domain. And the more it gets directed in the spiritual domain, then that's how the person becomes spiritually realized. So basically the idea is we withdraw our consciousness from matter and then invest our consciousness in spirit. So basically these are the stages of yam, niyam, and the consciousness is withdrawn, that is pratyahar. And then we go towards dhyan, dharana and samadhi. So basically this is how consciousness is withdrawn, is transferred from the material reality to spiritual reality in the yoga paths. Now in the bhakti tradition, it is slightly different, or rather, it was not slightly, substantially different. That it is understood that there are these three domains, and we could say that the ultimate reality, Krishna, exists on one side, and the material world exists on the other side. This is one way of understanding it. Another way of understanding it is that actually Krishna exists everywhere. Krishna exists in the material world. So we can go toward Krishna by going into the material world and going. So one way to go towards Krishna is to turn away from the material world and see Krishna. But the other is that we can go through the material world and also reach Krishna. That's how, for example, 7.7, it is said that in the Bhagavad Gita that Sutre Manigana Iva, that we look at the material things and see these material things are actually sustained by Krishna. So we don't have to turn away from the material world. We can go deeper into the foundations of the material world. Krishna says that Yadyad vibhuti mat sattvam shrimad urjitam eva tattad eva avagachatvam mama tejomshi sambhava. That, so for example, 10th chapter, 10.41, that gives a principle of how we can go through the material world towards the spiritual. Like we go to the temple and we look at the deities. The deity is Krishna manifesting as matter. We could see the deity as statue, but you can see the deity as, actually, yes, it is a statue, but it is much, much more than the statue. It's so much more than a statue that the fact that it is a statue becomes irrelevant. Just like a currency note is paper, but it is so much more than paper that the fact that it is paper becomes irrelevant. So both paths are accepted. The 6.22, 6.30, that even through the yoga path also one can come to Krishna. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. That withdraw your consciousness completely. Krishna also talks about that. Yatro paramate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya. Withdraw your consciousness completely. But then from there one goes towards Yomam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati. One who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me. So the ultimate spiritual reality can be perceived both ways. As devotees, when we are doing our sadhana, at that time, we are trying to withdraw our consciousness inward so that it can go deeply towards Krishna. But then we also engage the consciousness in this world, but we don't want it to be caught in this world. We want it to go through this world to Krishna. When Prabhupada came to America, he didn't see America just, oh, this prosperous land. I have lived in such poverty, and now there is so much comfort and luxury over here. Prabhupada saw, oh, this is also a place where everybody is ultimately longing for Krishna. And I need to give Krishna to people over here. So Prabhupada saw from the spiritual perspective that Rajastamo Gunaera Sabai Acharya. He didn't see this as a land of prosperity. He saw a land of spiritual bankruptcy. And he thought that I have to give spirituality. So for us as devotees, this can be, we balance both. So there is, when we practice bhakti, for us, during our Jagruti state, we have immersive bhakti, where we try to restrict our consciousness to specific devotional manifestations. And then we have inclusive bhakti, where we go out into the world. But there also we try to see how Krishna is acting and manifesting in the world. And thus the mystery of consciousness becomes more and more way by which we realize the ultimate mystery of Krishna. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. I spent a lot of time in the first part, which I'll elaborate a little bit more. So we discussed the mystery of consciousness first, that consciousness and brain, we discussed how it comes from, it can be seen to be the origin, but it can also be seen to be the transmitter. And in our tradition, we understand the transmitter in terms of our experience, depending on what is the locus and focus of our consciousness, where we are primarily directing our consciousness. Different people's experience can be different. Then we just talk about the states of consciousness, that depending on how far the consciousness is going, the consciousness can be either Swapna, Jagruti, or Sushupti, or Turya. So the consciousness coming to the material world is Jagruti. Consciousness coming barely out through the body is Swapna. Consciousness barely coming here is Sushupti. And consciousness going towards the spiritual world is Turya. So these states of consciousness, what does this imply? What does it signify? Signifies, first of all, that there is, that our present sense of reality and identity, both what we experience, they are so fragile and volatile that therefore we can experience that there is a higher identity, higher, stabler identity and reality. That is where one can go towards Atma Gyan. But beyond that, this is the first signification. The second signification could be also that there is a, if you consider the stage of consciousness or the theater of consciousness, our consciousness is going various places in the theater of consciousness, but then there is a director of consciousness, and that is the Paramatma, who is like the parent controlling what the child can watch. The last part I discussed was about how Bhakti provides us. Bhakti can have, we can with that withdrawal of consciousness for going towards the divine. But there can also be the deepening of consciousness to go through material to the spiritual. So we can withdraw our consciousness from material to go to spiritual, or through material to spiritual. So we do both of these, and ultimately we try to realize the higher reality, that is Krishna, or rather the highest reality, that is Krishna. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Are there-
Krishna. Pranam Prabhuji. Please accept my humble obeisances. What a wonderful enlightening class today, Prabhuji. You explained it on a very high level, which not many of us can understand, but you explained it so well. The system of soul, the state of consciousness, mystery of consciousness, and we have to be very serious in our sadhana, in our bhakti. You explained it so beautifully, the brain is the transmitter of consciousness. We don't even realize that the brain is transmitting everything. The brain is undoubtedly the important element, And you explain about the Chaitanya also, and then that Chit is also so pure consciousness, and about the experience of identity. So I was just wondering, if we sometimes if one thinks oh, I'm this now, I have achieved this goal, that shouldn't be in us, right? The experience of identity. Do you think that is a good thing to think about? If you have progressed and then you experience that identity, how do you define that? I was just wondering. It's on such a high level, Prabhuji, today's class, so it's very difficult to understand, So the experience of identity, I was just wondering if you could just briefly, define that.
Well, our experience of identity is shaped by, there is identity and there is what we identify with.
Yes.
So, for example, say you may be in a particular position, I may be in a particular position. Say, like I said, that I'm simultaneously a brahmachari, I'm a middle-aged man, I'm an Indian, I'm an engineer, I'm a teacher. So we all have various roles. Now we may identify with one of those roles more than others. Can you
please unmute yourself, please?
mute yourself.
Hare Krishna, devotees, please unmute. Mute yourself while you're talking. Sorry, Prabhuji. Yes, go ahead.
So we have our fundamental identity. That is who we are as souls. That is, we are souls, we are parts of Krishna. Mm-hmm. But then we have many functional roles in the world.
Yes.
So based on the functional roles, we have our functional identity also. So this could be based on our age, this could be based on our education, this could be based on our income level, it could be based on our relationship status, it could be based on our gender, nationality, and it goes on. So now, among these various identities, our consciousness, it comes out from here. In one sense, it encompasses all these identities. But our consciousness may concentrate more on one identity than another. So, for example, a woman may be working, but she may be mother and she may be working. But she may identify more with her job than with her role as a mother, or she may identify more with the role as a mother than as a professional. That can vary. So basically, in our present level, based on our particular upbringing, our conceptions, our priorities, we may identify with a particular role. But all these are actually roles. Now, depending on our service, we may decide to identify with one particular role more than others. But ultimately, we want to go beyond all these roles. Arjuna was torn because two roles pulled him in different directions. The Kshatriya role required him to fight, and the Kuru Nandana, the member of the Kuru dynasty, that Kula role required him to not What does he do? So Krishna says you cannot resolve this at the level of functional identity. Understand that you are a soul, and as a soul, you are my part. And through all these roles, you are meant to serve me. So then, how can you best serve me right now? But then Arjuna decided that it was through fighting that he could serve. So
Right.
we cannot wish away our present functional roles or the functional identification that comes with our roles. But that's
Okay.
why we can't over-identify. There's our identity and there's what we identify with. So if we regularly remind ourselves that fundamentally I'm a soul, and then specific roles that we may play, we can play accordingly.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful answer. It clears all the doubt. And like you explained about the state of, consciousness, and then you said about the Jagruti, Swapna, and Turiya. It was so wonderful explanation. I won't take much of time. I would. You have some time for question answer, Prabhuji?
Yes, about 10 minutes.
Okay, I will just see. So, Supriya Tarlikar Mataji, please go ahead with your question. Unmute yourself.
Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, please accept my humble obeisances. Prabhuji, you said we are all same at the soul level. Okay, we differ only in the gross body or subtle body.
No, when did I say that? I never said that. Because the soul is also an individual. And every soul has individuality. So each one of us is as an individual. There is distinctness. Of course, there is similarity, but being similar is different from being the same.
Where is the difference?
No, each of us is
at the soul level. At the soul level, where is?
No, each of us is individual. So individuality means there is a difference.
Yeah, I understand we are different souls, but at the soul level, I don't understand where is the difference between, say, you and me. There is no difference, right? I mean, at the soul level.
Are you by where you means? Are you asking for the location, or where means
No,
you're asking for the
in terms of quality?
Okay.
Say
there are different things. Basically, in the spiritual journey, you could say if I can say this is the spiritual. If this is the spiritual journey. So then in the spiritual journey, we are initially caught in material diversity. Oh, this person is attractive, this person is not attractive. And this diversity often leads to dissension. Dissension is conflict. And diversity leads to fragmentation. And this can be based on gender, nationality, ethnicity, so many things. So from there, we come to the state of material commonality. Actually, we are all human beings, all living beings. We are all struggling for existence. People say when two countries are fighting here, in movies they may say, that if a person dies, look at their blood. Which blood is a Hindu blood, which blood is Muslim blood, which blood is the Shia blood, which blood is a Sunni blood, which blood is a Jewish blood, which blood is a Arabic, a Palestinian blood, Israeli blood. Find that. So then you see, we can go beyond material diversity to material commonality. And then beyond that, we can go to spiritual commonality. But then, this is where the Advaitic journey ends. The Bhakti journey, this is the Advaitic perfection. That there is spiritual commonality, there is oneness beyond the diversity. There is the unity of Brahman beyond the diversity of Prakriti. Spiritual diversity means this is actually the So in the Bhakti perfection, we understand that we are souls, but right now all that we know about the soul is that it's Satchitananda. Now, where exactly is the locus of the personality of the soul, the individuality of the soul? But that knowledge is quite complex. And in general, the specifics of spiritual reality in terms of an analytical explanation are not given in the tradition. In terms of aesthetic explanation, like say Madhumangal has a particular personality, Subala has a particular personality, Radharani has a particular personality, Lalita has a particular personality, Vishakha has a particular personality that's described. But they are all spiritual beings of Satchidananda. Now, where exactly the Satchidananda, the difference is there? That because the spiritual reality is so difficult for us to conceive, I haven't read anywhere the specifics of the locus, of the location of the difference. But spiritually, we are all similar. We are not same. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, because you said, right, Radharani is, in temple we say senior devotee, I'm senior devotee, he's junior devotee, so I should give obeisances and pranam to you, and something like that. Or Radharani is the very dearmost devotee of the Lord. So from that, I was confused, like at the soul level, how do we differ? And why, if at the soul
So I
level
was
we
saying
all
that
are, if
at the
all are
soul
same,
level, at the all level, at the soul level, we all have particular roles in which we serve Krishna. And those roles are eternal roles. The roles we have at present are temporary roles. So the roles in the material world, they are temporary. The roles in the spiritual world are eternal. So God is a supreme reality. So God cannot have a mother or a father. Yashoda, when she is playing the role of the mother of Krishna, that's a role. But that role is an eternal role. So in that sense, right now, if I'm becoming proud, so when I said we are all I didn't exactly say we are all the same. I said that we shouldn't over-identify with the present material roles, even when spiritual organization. That even if I may be a devotee who has brought you to bhakti, but that does not necessarily mean that my role as a preacher and your role as a student, that is what is going to be eternally there. So sometimes in order to facilitate spiritual advancement, there are certain hierarchies which are established and emphasized. But we shouldn't get so caught in the hierarchies that we forget that the spiritual realities, ultimately we are all similar in the sense that we are servants of Krishna.
Correct.
Prabhuji.
Yeah.
So when we say, we are Sanatans, right? Soul is Sanatan. So main dharma of the soul is service to Lord. So how in the animal forms, animals serve Lord?
Are you saying in the material world or in the spiritual world?
In the material world.
In the material world, nobody is serving the Lord. In the material world, everybody is acting according to their material natures. And those material natures are working according to the will of the Lord. So when the fly is drawn towards a particular flower, is happening under the control of material nature. And that is ultimately under the control of Krishna. But in the material world, very few people are consciously serving. Even the souls in human body are not consciously serving the Lord.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhuji.
That question, and thank you, Prabhuji, for that wonderful answer. I see Hare Krishna, Shiv Kumar, Prabhuji, please go ahead with your question.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhu. Prabhu, one question on the foundational question, Prabhu, purpose of life itself. Like in Vaishnava Siddhanta, we say our perfection is serving the Lord. And per my understanding in Gaudiya Siddhanta, not even personal liberation. but just the service is our perfection. But on the other hand, in many of the Prabhupada lectures, I hear that repeatedly, the birth, death, and old age and diseases are the ones that we have to get over. That is the purpose of human form of life. So I just wanted to understand, Prabhu, it seems to be contradicting the goals itself. If our goal is service, even in material world,
so
it seems.
the thing is that, the truth that, see, service is our eternal seva, that is our Sanatan Dharma. So, in one sense, whether we serve in the material world or in the spiritual world, the service in the material world, service in the spiritual world, both are same. So, in that sense, why differentiate? But when we are doing seva also, when we are doing Sharanagati, so one of the characteristics of seva in the mood of Sharanagati is that Krishna says, or rather the Purana say that accept what is favorable, what is anukul, and avoid what is pratikul. So now in the material world, there is much that is pratikul to our service. So what is the pratikul? So the unfavorable broadly fall in two categories. One is temptations and the other is tribulations. That, oh, there is so much pleasure if you just give up Krishna. That is temptation. And there is so much trouble. What is your Krishna Bhakti doing for you? So basically, when we remember these temptations and tribulations, they can inspire us to move towards a more favorable situation for service. So as devotees, we don't want to go to the spiritual world just for the sake of going to the spiritual world. We want to go to the spiritual world because there we can serve Krishna without distractions. Like somebody can say, oh, God is everywhere. God is there in my home also. God is there in my office also. Why do I need to go to the temple? Yeah, at one level we can say, yes, God is there in my heart and God is there wherever I go. But can I perceive God over there? Can I remember God over there? Isn't my remembrance aided and enhanced when I go to an environment where the Lord's manifestation is more evident to me? So like that, for us, there are certain situations which are much more favorable for our remembrance. And remembering how the present situations are unfavorable can impel us to go towards the more favorable situations. So we don't want to go away from the material world simply because it is miserable. That is, that can be an initial impetus. But ultimately we want to go towards the spiritual world because there is a greater opportunity to serve Krishna. That's the journey from material life to spiritual life. It can be because initially it is because this is frustration, this is misery, and this is happiness. That can be the initial motivation. But then the problem with this view is that sometimes it may happen that I may get happiness over here also. And sometimes I may get frustration in spiritual life also. So if my motivation is simply that, oh, this is frustrating and that is enjoyable, then we will not keep going. We'll go and we may take a U-turn and come back over here. So our motivation should not be just this world is a place of distress, that's why I want to go there. It is that here service is distracted and interrupted. Here service can be undistracted. There is no Maya, there is no Trividitapa, which is distracting us from this world, and that's why we want to go to the spiritual world. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for that wonderful answer. I see another two hands raised. Prabhuji, can I take that question? Will you be able to take that question? Let's see. We'll take one question first, and then depending on time, we'll decide. Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji. So I see Sushilpa, devotee. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji Danvat Pranam. Thank you for giving the opportunity. Prabhuji, thank you so much. Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji. Thank you for your association, Dandavat Pranam devotees. Prabhuji, my question, first of all, thank you so very much. Your classes are so deep to understand. Very much informative. Thank you. My question, Prabhuji, while you were answering to one of the Mataji's question, if it is me to know my identity as a Kshatriya or a Vaishya or Shudra, whatever it is, I can experience and so forth. But while we are temporarily taking care of the kids, and then in your lecture class, you were mentioning about the experience which changes the perspective on how we think and so forth, right? The consciousness will depend on the experience also, and that experience again, all that you have said. Now, how would we, for kids, when we are taking care of them, to know their real identity, how long would it take for them to realize their identity, real identity, and how would to better serve them? What can I do to what kind of experience should I provide them for them to know their identity to the best and fast? In this current situation of material world with phones and so forth.
Well, whatever be the technology and the distractions that are there, ultimately the soul has a longing for Krishna. And that longing can be temporarily, one can be diverted from it, but ultimately nothing else satisfies the soul. And sometimes with every new technology, there have always been people who have been dystopian. When the printing press came up and Bibles started being distributed, written and distributed, and before only the clergy could have the Bibles, and they would read the Bibles out and explain to others. They said, all people will misinterpret and everything will be destroyed. So when like that, whenever any invention has come up, there has been, when the internet came up, when the steam engine came up, when the guns came up, when the birth control pill came up, when the atom bombs came up, there's always been the dystopia. There's a dystopian view that, this is going to be the end of the world, this is going to be destruction. Now, we may feel while we are going through that particular situation that this is going to be this is radically different from what it was in the past. Well, not really. When the TV came up, when the radio came, so it has been the history of humanity is that whenever any new thing comes up, there is either excitement on one side, there is alarm on the other side. The same principle of raga and dvesha, of temptation and tribulation. So we don't have to take social media as categorically different. There are dangers. We need to be aware of the dangers. The dangers don't seem as evident as, say, if a snake were coming into our house and bite. We'll be very alert. So this is also a danger. In fact, our children's minds are like a fish, and the algorithms of social media are like the specific bait given to attract not just our children's mind, our minds also. So we have to be careful. But there's no need to be dystopian. We continue presenting bhakti, and we use technology to present bhakti. So devotees are making video games now. Devotees are making presentations available through the means of technology. So as long as we are helping our children and helping ourselves also ultimately gain a compass. See, we cannot turn back the clock. Bhakti is not about turning back the clock. It is about turning on the compass. And as long as we are providing the resources by which that compass can be turned on, then through whatever temptations might be there in this world, every one of us, individually as ourselves, as our children, we will find the way forward toward Krishna. So
thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. So it's more like a trial and error, provide to and find out what exactly they like in a positive way, obviously, and then wait until they really patiently wait until they really identify it. That's what I understood.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji, the wonderful.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Yeah, thank you for here.
Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhaktavinda ki jai.
We are obviously.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Patitanam Bhavne
Thank you, Prabhuji, for leading the class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for wonderful class.